Actually, people dealing with activity on node, that's an important part of project management. That is where you make up timelines, you estimate a critical path as well. So moving on with this example that is already set here, okay? This is basically a software development progress where you are telling the number of days, how much will that take, what's the number of flow that can be entered within this thing. So the first thing, the first initial start is like design log, right? So you need to make a design log. So getting on to the key, the earliest time you start on day 0, the duration for this time is 17 days, and in that case you will be finishing this job within 70 days. That is the 17th day, that's the earliest possible thing, right? So because this is the first activity on the entire path, so you have to start it on the latest start time you can do is on day 0. Total float is as well 0, and that makes the latest finish time as 17, right? So moving further, you have another some more activities, right? Like reference log, plan application, plan codes, system requirement, things like that, right? So moving on to this one, so 17th, on day 17 you finish your activity 1 and you move on to activity 2, right? So with activity 2, your initial start date or the earliest date is day 17, right? And you have been given that you have a duration of 34 days, right? Within 34 days you'll be able to complete this thing, right? So what's the earliest possible that can be done? So getting on with the calculator, that's something like this, right? 17 plus 34, that makes 51. So on day 51 you guys are able to deliver this project the earliest possible finish time using this duration, right? And if the case is vice versa, if you have been given what's the earliest possible time and what is the earliest finish and what is the earliest possible time, so you simply just minus them, and what you get is the duration of the time that is required for that activity, right? Moving further, similar goes for activity 3. 17 plus 4 makes 21. Getting on to activity 5, on day 51 you start the activity, you take 39 days, so 51 plus 39, that makes 90, right? Basically you'll be delivering this thing in the earliest possible is on day 90th, right? But apart from that, in activity 4, that is like you are delivering that thing on day 17, and it takes you 74 days, right? That makes 91 days. All right, so on 91st day, that is the best possible thing for you to give up. Like this is the longest activity throughout the entire path, right? So this is your critical path that has the longest activity. So with this you get on to the point that on day 91 you need to deliver your final proven system, right? And it takes 2 further days to process that or test that. It is finally, you can finish your project on day 93 once you start your project on day 0, right? So this entire thing is your critical path because this is giving the longest time. This has the most number of dependents, right? If this activity of 74 days cannot be completed, so you cannot complete the entire project, right? If this activity is eliminated and all the other activities are processed, in that case you cannot complete any sort of activity. So that means that is your critical path or the longest path that is available in the entire line, right? So getting on to the lower columns or the lower row, that's the latest start time, total float, and the latest finish time, right? So with this one we get that on day 93 we are finishing this job, right? So the duration for this is 2 days, right? And basically with this we get the latest finish time, that is 91, right? So how did it work? It's basically 93 minus 9, sorry, minus 2, the number of days, that makes 91, right? So on day 91, that is the latest time you can start this activity as well. I said, getting back with this, right? On day 91, you need to deliver this thing, right? So basically, in recognition to this, because this activity, the latest this activity can start is on day 91, for the reason this activity 12 is dependent on activity 4. Once you complete the activity 4 on day 91, then it is possible for you to start the activity 12. So in all the cases, whatever the earliest possible finish time for you, the latest finish time for you that on the day you can deliver this activity is day 91, right? Because on day 91 you can start this activity, and without activity 4 you can start activity 4 at 12, right? So that means that the latest finish time for each of the subsequent activities that are not on the critical path is like 91, right, as stated in this, right? So now, how do you calculate your latest start time, right? That's on the corner in the lower row. Basically, how that works is like getting on with 7, right? 9 day is the maximum day we can finish the time minus the duration of the time. That is 12 days, right? That makes 79. So 79th is the latest or the last day that you can start up with this activity, right? Right. We are guessing the point that we get this activity on day 33 and we can still postpone this within in our project because we don't have any other thing. We have a lot much time. If we complete start this activity on day 33 and finish this on day 55, then all the remaining days in between, we don't have any positive use for that. So in this time, normally, practically, the projects, the resources are used on other different various aspects so the project can move entirely in a sequence, right? So we got the answer 79, right? So the next question is, how do we calculate the float, right? Float is basically what safety margin or like what sort of margin you have before starting your project. Float is basically your latest start time, that is like 79 in this case, minus your earliest start time, that was 33. That gives you a float value of 46, right? So this being followed through the entire chain, right? Once you get through along all these activities, you get to know that the latest or the earliest possible time for all these activities you need to go is day 67, right? So your activity 6 can be postponed, like can be delivered by day 67. So the same calculations go for activity number 6. That is 67 minus 12, that makes 55 is the last or the latest start time, and the float is something like 55 minus 21, right? That gives you 34 as the float. So these are basically the calculations involved along through this entire chain. For the first row, you move along with this entire graph and you give up an answer, and with the lower row you move simply back and you calculate all the values. That's how this is done.